Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ian is a Weirdo. Oh, I have a text that I need to send. Hi Winter, welcome in. Let's see. I always forget to do things before, and then I remember. So at least I remember. Sometimes, eventually, maybe. Who knows? Winter, I'm very happy you're here. It was so great to see you live yesterday, and I'm hoping I can be a little bit more involved. So we're going to talk about a lot today. I did put a trigger warning below. It's a little hard to read. I know the text is weird, but honestly, I don't want to deselect it and then not have it be available later on. So it's a spooky text, and I really like that. So yes, so we're going to be talking about mental health, mental illness, some failures in the mental health system, and some of the experiences that I had in my most recent treatment. I'm going to be talking in depth about my experience. I'm going to try not to incorporate anyone else's story because I don't think that's my business. If some things do come up, I'm going to abide by HIPAA, not release any information that would identify them. And then I'm also going to be talking about some trans and queer issues that I encountered in my treatment, because that was honestly probably one of the biggest holdups for me getting treatment. And I only want to talk about my experience because I just think that it's such a deeply personal thing that I don't want to get into other people's shit. That's their experience. But I did see some pretty rough things. You'll notice I'm still wearing my hospital bracelet, and the only reason I'm wearing that is for this specific um, live, because I wanted to remember the date that I went in so I could keep my timing straight. But that's once I'm done with this live, we're cutting this bitch off, and your bitch is gonna be free. I feel like kind of like the genie in Aladdin, where I got these cuffs on. But so a lot of you know, and I've tried to be fairly transparent with my this most recent kind of up and down, really down and up episode that I had most recently. And I did have to take a step back from YouTube. We'll kind of see where things go and see if that continues or whatever. Um, because for me, I was getting my feelings hurt a lot. And even if people didn't mean to be nasty, just like this, I was so fucking sensitive, so sensitive. It was ridiculous. And I really had to step back because all of these things were hurting my feelings that shouldn't have. And I didn't even bother addressing them with a lot of people because it was just so minor that I knew big picture ultimately didn't matter. But they mattered at the time, and I was just kind of so for those of you who may not have followed some of my mental health journey recently, so first of all, just kind of laying out, I have several mental health diagnoses, and one of them is bipolar disorder. I went through a pretty significant bipolar episode. I'm calling the whole thing one episode rather than splitting it up into two parts, because even though the switch flipped pretty quickly, um, it's still kind of the nature of bipolar to go from one extreme straight into the other extreme. So I experienced a pretty deep depression, a really deep depression actually, for about 2 months. And that's when I started taking a step back from YouTube, taking a step back from social media, because I just really just anything could really get under my skin, and it was so fucking hard. Um, I was like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person who comes for everyone who says something minorly you know, controversial or fucking, just insensitive or something like that. I didn't want to be that person. So I had to take a step back for my own mental health, and then also to just not ruin friendships and establish you know uh, relationships that I had. So for me, it was really important to take that step back. And so I guess I started moving into this depression. My timeline's gonna be fucking off, so I'm not even gonna attempt to tell you how, when that started. So it started, and I moved into a depression. And the big thing with bipolar and pretty much any mental health condition is like sleep, eating, all of those routines that you have are very important. But they have noted that those are extra super important for people with bipolar, because that can push you into an episode really bad and really fast. So for me, I went, started just like sleeping less, eating less, all of these things, and they all kind of compounded to make a really challenging situation. I It was a mess. And so I was really depressed, and I was thinking of going into treatment of some kind. If you aren't familiar with like levels of care of mental health treatment, especially like shorter term treatment, because not everyone goes from like zero to like long term care in like a permanent like psych ward situation. So like that's not at all there's like a huge spectrum of care for mental health patients, which I'm thankful for, and a lot of people are thankful for, because they don't need that full level of care. They just need things for acute episodes in a chronic condition. So let me just take a little CBC. So I started looking into care. So there are several different levels of care. Um, One level of care is called residential. Usually those can last 2+ months, and you stay at a facility. You are getting treatment for like several hours a day, and it's all different types of therapy. I know I'm like very made up. I wanted to look cute, as cute as I can look, for my welcome back tour. And so there's residential, so you stay there day and night for months on end. And you also receive a lot of therapy. A lot of the places will have, thank you, I appreciate it. I like what I did with my mustache. I tried something different. Also, I have my tooth earring, one of my favorite pairs of earrings. I usually only wear one earring at a time now. Just feels more mask, and I dig it. But I love anatomy and bones, and I love teeth. My mom's a dentist, and I've always been obsessed with teeth. So yeah, I got this like shiny. You can't quite see it, but it's kind of got like some dimension. This tooth earring, it just makes me feel just like gender. It's like all of the gender, and I appreciate it. So, but there's residential, and then you sleep there at night. I know I got him like a while ago, and I'm just like, ever since when I saw them, it was like the sky parted, and it was like the world was like, yes, you need these, and I couldn't resist. Like they could have been like $50, and I would have been like, I don't have this money, but I'm giving it to you. I will sell you parts of my body for these teeth earrings. Luckily, they were not that expensive, and they are fucking cute, and I'm obsessed with them. Um, I kind of wish I could have like a tooth like nose piercing or something. I don't know how that would work, but dreams may happen eventually. I don't know. But there's residential. You stay there all night. Oh, real human teeth. That's so cool. My mom has like a jar of teeth, or she used to when she had her own practice, because she would use the jar to practice different like techniques that were like emerging and stuff like that. So like there was literally like a jar of teeth at my mom's practice, and she would practice on them, but I was always like, ooh, like I want a jar of teeth. They were in like a bleach solution, so it wasn't something that you would, um, I guess you could take them out, clean them, and then make a necklace out of them. But that's so cool. I gotta see that necklace. I'm very interested, and I kind of need one. So there's residential. You stay there all night. You're constantly under supervision by staff, therapists, things like that. You also get psychiatry care that you meet with them like once a week or something, and they change your medicine. It's a great place to level out, but also get a lot of therapy. And then stepping down from that slightly is partial hospitalization programs, or PHP programs. Oh, I don't have one. Man, you need one. Yes, I would love that. I love the camp of like fake ones, but real ones would be so cool. Mel would never touch me while I was wearing it, but is it worth it? I don't know. Um, so that would gross her the fuck out. But who knows? Maybe she'd be into it. Mel surprises me constantly. I love it. Um, so there are is partial hospitalization programs. So they're very similar to residential programs. Usually you go to them like 5 or 6 days a week. It's all about like the hours a week that you attend. And basically you're in residential for the day, but you get to go home to your own bed, to your own life. And so it's a good way to ease out of residential care where you're constantly under supervision. Um, and then another level down is IOP, or intensive outpatient. And so this is kind of like half of the hours of a partial hospitalization program. I have had really good luck with a virtual IOP program called Charlie Health. That I highly recommend. It's been fantastic. I don't believe they operate outside of the US, the US right now, but they're amazing. But I've also done in-person ones. But you get to go home at night, and it's just really easing you back into life, because life is super overwhelming, and you kind of get your blinders on to like a lot of life's issues when you're in such a higher level of care like residential. So it's kind of easing you back into like the intensity of life, right? And so, you can also go to the hospital, like an ER facility. Those are situations when you are not safe to yourself or others. And oftentimes, what they'll do in those situations is they will move you from the hospital to another program. Sometimes it will be residential, and sometimes it will be an inpatient facility, which are usually shorter term. And that's what I just got out of. And I had kind of a mixed experience with that, and I'll definitely get into that. But um, but yeah, so inpatient, I was in there for so I got in there on the 4th, and I got out on the 15th yesterday. So I was in there 11 days, and which is like a little longer than average, but not like crazy bananas. It's definitely a little bit more intense in um, kind of your the vigilance of staff generally, because people who are usually in there are more in a state of crisis. People who are in residential aren't necessarily in the intensity of crisis. So it can be like things are bad, but they're not like you're about to hurt yourself or someone else bad. Um, so I just got out of inpatient, and what I'm going to do instead of going into residential, which was one of my options, but I have a lot of reservations to that, because I'm trans and because I'm queer, but mostly because I'm trans. And the idea of staying in place has been a huge holdup to me receiving care, because I'm so scared of like being roomed with someone who's transphobic or violent, or I don't know. And like, I just really kind of built it up in my head. And then I've also had those fears validated by people who are like in the psychiatry and psychological field, where they're like, yeah, those things that you're afraid of actually do happen. So it wasn't like, whoa, you're being totally outlandish and those things will never happen to you. It was like, those things can happen. And so and while I appreciate the honesty, I'd rather have people be honest with me than blow smoke up my ass and be in a situation all of a sudden where I'm not safe. Um, so that's what ended up happening. But I got to a point, so I was really depressed for about 2 months. And then because I wasn't sleeping, because I wasn't eating properly, what bipolar can do is it can swing from one end of the intense spectrum to the other end of the intense spectrum. And so I became manic. And I was manic for about 2 or 3 days before I went into the hospital. And I was hoping that with my emergency medication, when I'm starting to get um, yeah, US can be interesting at times for sure. But there are some good things. It's not all bad, but when it's bad, it can be very bad, and those feelings of safety, I think, are um, valid concerns for me and for other people. So you know, but I got to a point where I couldn't delay care anymore. I was manic and I couldn't sleep, and was going several nights without sleeping. I was feeling so, some people think about mania as this like happy, euphoric state, and it can be, but it can also be violent. It can be intense irritability. It can be, um, you can just become this huge monster. And what I've realized in the past couple of weeks is that all of the big issues and interpersonal issues that I have had, especially in like my relationship now, a lot of them were not because of my depression. Like, depression definitely doesn't make things fun for anybody, but my mania has, and like usually I don't notice I'm manic when I'm manic, and this time I was thankfully very aware of it, so I was able to get help faster than having to look in like hindsight and figure out that I was fucked, and figure out that I fucked shit up. But I was just kind of like, sometimes I would like black out and I'd be like, what happened? I had no memory of like things that happened when I was in this intense state. And so I went to the hospital. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to put those fears of being trans and being safe aside because I was not safe. Like, those fears may or may not have happened, but the actual safety that I was concerned about, that was in danger. So I went to the hospital, a local hospital. I went to the ER. Um, my wife and my dad were there, and they kind of helped me kind of, eye on the prize. Don't try to like jump ship now. Let's get you into care. All of these types of things, and I am so thankful that they were both there, because it really did make a huge difference in my ability to. It helped calm me down just like this much, and that was the difference of me absolutely losing my shit and holding out until medications could kick in and they would make me sleep and all of this stuff. So, yeah, it was a pretty intense experience. I believe there's only one other time that I've gone to the hospital for mania. And luckily that episode was very short, but I was already in like the ward. Some hospitals will have psychiatric wards within them, and usually you're not there for very long, so it can be good for acute, like, things go up or down and then you level out, or they're good for holding you until they can find you a place to stay. So it really depends on the hospital and what resources they have available. But for me, that was really essential in making sure that I was taken care of. So they gave me a really strong sedative, um, and um, and they gave me something else I don't quite remember. Like, the memories are like so blurry, which is always really upsetting for me because I don't like the like, I already have a really bad memory, but the idea of like memories being like stolen from you is like, for me, just so unsettling. And I'm like, what did I do? Did I fuck anything up? Like, I just don't. I don't love it. It's not my favorite experience, if I'm being honest. Um, so they gave me a really strong sedative because basically, when you're in a manic episode, as far as I understand, and as far as my treatment, it's about basically forcing you to sleep, forcing you and your nervous system to calm the fuck down. And sometimes you can prevent manic episodes, sometimes you can shorten them, decrease the intensity, all of that. So for me, sedatives, specifically in the antipsychotic drug class, have been very important in my treatment. And I know when I say antipsychotic, a lot of people just assume that those are a blanket statement for anyone experiencing psychosis. I don't experience psychosis, Although this time was like, I mean, I wasn't psych, I wasn't in a place of psychosis. Some people with bipolar do have experienced psychosis, maybe schizoaffective, bipolar. Um, but for me, usually antipsychotics are in the same class as anticonvulsants for people with epilepsy. Oh my god, epilepsy. So it's a very strong, like, calm your shit in your body type of medication. So so that is a drug class that I rely pretty heavily on when I'm in that state of mind. And so I was gonna crochet, but I mean, there's so much to tell that I think it would just distract me and keep me from, getting stuff done. I was gonna make uh, a uh, a bisexual snake, like I made the non-binary snake here, a little sneaky snake. But this yarn has it out for me and has had it out for me from the beginning. And so I just cut it, but I can't find a single end now. It might be one loop, who knows? Um, but it is quite frustrating. So I'm on the receiving end of bisexual fury, which I'm like, calm down. Yeah, I know it's such a cute little snake, and like it's just stuff. There's no like wire in it or anything. I didn't want anything poking through. It's a very cute little snake. For some reason, because it's non-binary, but I want to call it Herman. I don't know why. It just seems like a good name for it. And then it's like I didn't even think about it when I named them, but it's like her man, so it's kind of like both genders, but that just happened to work out. I just was like, this looks like a Herman. Oh, that would be so awesome. I would love to see that. I have I can actually, let me see if I can find it, and hopefully my YouTube won't start just playing. Um, but I found a free snake tutorial on YouTube, and oh my gosh, I'm sorry if my fucking shit just goes out. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I don't want to see. Sometimes it's so hard to get. Like, where's. Ugh, YouTube sometimes is like, no. But I can share the snake tutorial with you. They used a thicker chenille yarn, and I don't particularly love using chenille yarn, so I adjusted my hook size down to 3.75, and then I used a 4-weight yarn, and I really liked it. So if you want to do something like that, you can obviously do it with any size yarn, things like that. Oh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, the colors are so wild. I love bright stripe. Um, I was in the hospital for less than 24 hours. Yeah, chenille is it's not my friend. Pass. I just posted the link to the other video if you wanted to check it out. I did have trouble placing the eyes, but I think it's more so that I just don't really know anything about snakes, and I don't really know where their eyes are. But I'm not gonna probably crochet, just because there's so much to talk about. There's so much. It was a pretty wild, you know, 12 days, for me. Um, they had me on this really strong medication, and so I would wake up like periodically, and because like it takes such a strong, um, uh, not stimulant, what's the opposite? Like tranquilizer to put someone out who's in active mania. It really like, it was like basically a step down from booty juice, which is a colloquial term that some of us in the mental health community use. Basically, booty juice is a shot of a really strong antipsychotic. Hey, Shell, welcome in. Thank you for coming in and hanging out. I'm just talking about a lot of stuff. It's a little hard to read, but I do have a trigger warning. It's a pretty intense situation that I've been in for the past couple months, and it just got worse. So yes, I'm just getting out of inpatient. I got discharged yesterday, and so I knew I needed like at least a day to fucking get my brain at least a little bit more calibrated to real life. And yeah, so while I was like waking up from this really strong sedative, I wasn't I couldn't figure out what was reality and what was not. And I was just kind of like really fuzzy in like the brain area. I like to call it my mashed potato brain time. And there was one nurse who came in, and I was like, I swear I went to middle school with this person. We're friends on Facebook. And so, like, I like just yesterday, I was able to like go and like look at her Facebook, and like I saw that like a month ago she posted like it had the hospital name on her little jacket, and then she was like moving to night shift, and that's like when I was in there for the most part. So I was like, okay, it's likely that I saw her, but let me reach out. So it turns out it was her, but I didn't know if I was hallucinating or not. Very unsettling feeling. I 0 out of 10 recommend. And I was like, did I see you? Because I'm really not sure if I just hallucinated you. And she was like, yeah, that was me. I didn't reach out to you. I like wanted to, but I can't because it's not legal. Because she's a professional. Cool. But like if I reach out, then she doesn't have to worry about that. So we talked a little bit, and that was a little bit interesting because she just knew me in middle school, and middle school is when a lot of my symptoms started to manifest, and I was very unstable. So she was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember you were having some trouble. I started talking about like my bipolar a little bit, and she had just come in to say, hey, she wasn't like my nurse, but she saw my name, and was like, oh, I think I know them. I'm gonna go and just see what's up. Exactly. Yeah. So I was like the lights are on. Something is home, but I don't know if it's even a person. I don't know what's going on. I have really spotty memory due to like my dissociative amnesia, and then also just being on heavy sedative, which will fuck anyone's memory. Um, So I was like, did I see you? And then so we talked a little bit. I talked about my bipolar. And then she was like, oh, yeah, I remember you were having some problems with like mood instability in, in middle school. And I was like, it made me want to die. Like, she meant she was very gentle with it. She was very professional with it. But she was just like, hey, when I knew you better, you were having problems then. And so, for those of you who have like a different school structure, here, middle school, the last year of middle school is 8th grade, and then high school starts in 9th grade. And I got diagnosed within 2 months of being in 9th grade with bipolar, in addition to a lot of other stuff. Not everything that I have, because some of that came later, but I got diagnosed with bipolar. Hey Tammy, welcome in. Yeah, heads up, I do have a trigger warning. We're talking about intense stuff today. My mental health treatment and what I went through. If this is too much for you, please take care of yourself first. That's absolutely more important than hearing me ramble on about how bad my mental health is and how shitty the mental health care that I received was. Um, Ooh, very nice. I will have to check it out. I'm like, Loops and Threads, I don't know. I just never really like commit to them. But Lion Brand, a good sale on Lion Brand makes a huge difference. So I will have to check them out because I love Lion Brand anti-pilling, and I love Heartland, I don't know. Very good yarn. And like it's good yarn. It's more expensive because it's good yarn, but usually I'm just broke as a joke. So anywho. So So it turns out I did see her, and I talked to her a little bit, but she kind of brought up all of these things that happened in middle school. And for me, that was a really turbulent time. And a lot of the reason I started going to therapy. And then okay, great, Tammy. Happy to know. Yeah, I want everyone to take care of themselves, and that's most important to me. I'm talking about moving from a very deep depressive episode that lasted about 2 months to going into a manic episode because of my bipolar. and having to be hospitalized and then moved into an inpatient facility. So I know some of those things are really touchy for people. So I don't ever want to push people back. I want to be able to tell my story, but I don't want it to infringe on anyone else's mental health, because that's totally counterproductive. So I know it's hard to read, so that's why I gave you the heads up. So I'm trying to, everyone who comments, I'm like, here's a heads up. It's really hard to read, but it's there. So no worries. I worry about everything. I'm a worrier at heart and by nature. And then I also have, like, 2 anxiety disorders that, cement everything really solid in there. So I'm like, kind of like, am I delusional? Am I hallucinating? What the fuck is happening? And so they're giving me all these downers, and eventually in the daytime, they're like, we're going to move you to another facility. And that's when I started to get really nervous, because a lot of the reasons, and I don't ever recommend avoiding care when you absolutely need it. But unfortunately for me, with my safety concerns being trans, I I really had a hard time finding um, a care facility that I felt comfortable with, because a lot of it was, well, some wards are separated by gender, or like by birth sex rather. And, so I was like, well, I don't want to like be in a group of just like all, like AFAB like folks. But I also like didn't want to be put in the like AMAB ward. And so I really had a lot of concerns about my safety in that, like, because a lot of places are like 2 beds per room. And exactly. And like, it got to a point, and it had been to a point even in my depressive state, where I should have gotten care and I didn't. I've avoided so much care, and I hate to say that because I'm always such a proponent of getting care when you need it, but I put off so much more intensive care because I just was so fearful. But I was at this point where I was like, I'm in danger. That trumps everything. And so, because, when I'm depressed, I can do and say a bunch of stupid things, but because it's something that I experience more, I know easier when I'm about to tip into a point where I'm no longer safe. But with my mania, it's so uncontrollable, and you're really not steering the car at that point. Like, your body's just doing, and you're like, shit. So like, it's very dangerous. Like, mania is not this like great fun time for the person experiencing it during and after the episode, and it's also really harmful and potentially dangerous for people around them. um you know so I didn't get treatment when I needed to earlier, because I was so concerned about, well, who are they going to room me with and what is going to happen. I just didn't feel comfortable being roomed with anyone. And so when I got transferred to the facility that I ended up in, that I just got out of yesterday, so also, so I don't love this, but I understand why it's a reality. But what happens is, you are taken from the hospital and you are escorted in the back of a cop car, because I think, and I didn't know much about it, when I had gone last year for SI, or suicidal ideation. Um, I didn't end up going anywhere. I actually ended up going home shortly after I came in, because they told me, well, hey, if you, even though you came here voluntarily, you will become an involuntary, like, you will be considered involuntarily committed once we put your name in the system. And then any place in the entire state of North Carolina, I don't know if every state's exactly the same, but in North Carolina, any place in the state, first come, first serve could take me. I have no idea where I'm going, and then I will be escorted in the back of a cop car, and they told me in handcuffs, and so that I wouldn't hurt myself. And Again, I understand why these rules are in place for a lot of people, but that just horrified me. Um, for my personal situation, I felt like it would make me feel more guilt, and then I would have safety concerns once I got to the place. And I had no idea if they had single bedrooms or if it was, two or more beds per room. And I just was really scared for my safety in a lot of ways. So that made me avoid care even more. And so in this particular hospital, I was escorted by the police in a cop car, and they did not handcuff me because I was relatively in control of my actions. Like it was still like la la la, like up in the sky, but I wasn't hurting myself or trying to hurt anyone else. I was not violent. So they did not handcuff me, which was a huge plus and definitely helped my mental health. I understand if someone's not being safe enough that they need to be in handcuffs. Um, Here's like a funny little story. And luckily the place was only like 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes away. But like, so I'm in hospital scrubs, right? At this point. And the police are taking me to it's called Triangle Springs, is the facility. And um I do I do this all the time when I'm driving. I try to be like a nice person, put on that, face. And so if I normally when I'm driving, if I see someone make eye contact with them, I'll just give them a little smile. It's just like, "Hey, see ya. Hope you have a good day." Just like a little smile like but I don't usually close my eyes like, because I'm driving and closing your eyes while driving isn't great. So I'm in the back of a cop car. I'm in a hospital gown, and I look over. I see someone driving, and I smiled like I normally do, and then I had this moment of realization where it was like I'm in the fucking back of a cop car, and like in this. I keep on wanting to say scrubs, but in a gown, and I'm like, I look like an absolutely fucking crazy person. So like once I had that realization, I just like stared forward and I was like, don't make eye contact with people. Cause you look like you belong in the loony bin, which, I did go to, so it's fair, but I just was like, that's embarrassing. For some reason that embarrassed me probably more than anything else. Let me check my phone, make sure I didn't miss anything. Nope. Um, so, um, so yeah, I get to the facility and I told the cop that I was like really nervous about going to the place because I was trans, and he was like kind of dismissive. I think he was trying to like de-escalate, like basic de-escalation, where it was like, oh, this is a great place. It's better than this other place. And which everybody knows that the other place has a very bad reputation. Like nobody comes out of there and would recommend it to a single fucking person, even person in the most severe crisis. They're like, no. And I actually went to that same hospital when I was diagnosed at 15. Like, that's how I got diagnosed at that hospital. Diagnosed with bipolar. Um, so like, this place is better. Some guy upstairs is trying to get into the same place because they know how good it is. And so it's like, well, like, it's not about how good the place is because I still have the safety concerns, and the safety concerns are primarily involving the patients. So it's not necessarily about the facility, it's about the patients and my ability to room alone. So the first night I got there, and this is pretty unique. So they were giving me the choice of whether or not I wanted to room in a female room or a male room. Usually it's just the sex you were assigned at birth. And so, uh, I did have a choice, but I still was like really fucking nervous. And I'm pre op, I'm very curvy. So I just didn't feel safe in really any situation. And I didn't want to make anyone else feel uncomfortable, compromise their treatment, their safety, their feeling. I mean, their safety would have been fine because I would have never messed with anyone like that. But like, I didn't want to make them feel nervous about rooming with a guy if they were a girl, anything like that. I wanted people Like, just didn't want any drama or any safety concerns or anything like that. So they did give me a choice the first night, and I decided to room with a girl, and she was already asleep, and so I didn't have any interaction with her, and she left the next day, so I had no interaction with her at all. She was just like dead to the world, and I was like, okay, I'll go in there, but like, yeah, I'm so really nervous. It's so much anxiety about that. And so the next day, I'm talking to one of the therapists, and I'm like, I still have a lot of safety concerns. I'm going to get a new roommate. I don't know how they'll react to me being a trans man, all of these things. And so they were like, and they were non binary. So, like, they understood my safety concerns, which I was really thankful for. Turns out we had a big queer and non-binary, queer and trans presence there, both in the patients and then in some of the staff. So that was nice. So they went and they're like, well, let me talk to the supervisor, address your concerns, all the stuff. And so they're like, so there were 4 wards in that treatment center. So the one I went to was mental health and dual diagnosis. So in this sense, dual diagnosis means recovering from it means addiction and mental health issues, which are very common for people who use illicit or even legal substances improperly, um, to use as a coping skill, and there's an underlying mental health issue. And I don't want to ever take away from the validity and the care that those people need, but there are distinct differences that the pure mental health community, I don't want that to sound like elitist, but just like, you know what I'm saying, like people who are just struggling with mental health issues, rather than people who are in recovery, detoxing, all of that stuff. There was a pure detox unit. There was a recovery unit, and then there was also a severe mental health unit. And so they were like, well, so when they came back, they're like, well, the only 1 bedroom that we have is on the severe mental health ward. And I was kind of like, isn't that kind of where I belong? Like, I'm in a really, really bad state. And they described it as pretty much only schizophrenia. Hi, Kiki. Um, Talking about the Springs. And I was gonna make another little sneaky snake like this, but in bisexual colors. But this yarn hates me, and I can't multitask for shit. So oh, smileys. Um, so I was kind of like, well, I don't think I would mind being there. In hindsight, it's probably better that I was where I was. That place, yeah. Also, if like you ever want to come up and talk about things, I can drop the link and you can come on up. But I won't expose your story because that's not my bag. Also, he's made up today. He's kind of cute. Got a little mustache going, darkened up things a little bit, so it emphasized the hairs. Um, and then I beat my face to oblivion because I was like, I look like shit. Um, so, anyways, yeah, so I was like, I kind of should be on the severe mental health unit because so there's only 2 diagnoses that fall under the severe mental health um, uh, list, and those are bipolar and schizophrenia. And I'm loving the makeup. Thank you. It's giving butch, and I have a little tooth earring, which is cute. And then I have my thank you very much, Tammy. I appreciate it. But in hindsight, that probably just like the vibe on the unit probably would have been a little too intense for me, and I think it would have prolonged my manic episode because just like the overstimulation of just kind of everyone else being in a really bad state. But yeah, and when I say severe mental illness, I don't want to discount people who don't have those diagnoses and experience severe symptoms. I think it's just that those 2 particular diagnoses, I was told, just require more maintenance, more vigilance in taking care of. because the extremes are so severe, and like bam, they're there, that they would just require a little bit more maintenance, and that's where that differentiation comes into play. It's not like, hey, you can have major depressive, but it's not that severe. Like, I'm not trying to take away from anyone experiencing that. But so I'm on this like dual diagnosis mental health ward, and so like they were the only room that they had with one bedroom, with one bed in the room, was on this more intense ward. And so I was like, maybe I should be there. I don't know. And then the person who was talking to me was amazing. Honestly, I love them. They're incredible. And so they told me, um, like, okay, well, we can keep the room empty from other people for you unless we get absolutely jam packed full. And so I was told that, and Kiki was my within 10 minutes of being told that, I got a roommate, and it happened to be Kiki, and I didn't know anything about Kiki, so I was like, hey, I was just told that no one else would be in this room, so I'm kind of panicking, freaking out. I don't know anything about Kiki. Turns out Kiki is like the coolest motherfucker on the planet. So I was very thankful that like 99% of my experience was rooming with her. um and but like, so I experienced that, and I was like, I don't know, so I'm kind of like panicking and talking to like a tech or a nurse or someone. I don't even remember. I was just like blah, 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 all up in my brain. And so I felt so bad because Kiki overheard this, and like I just saw her face like totally fall. Yeah. And Kiki, if you want to come up, I will drop the link. Feel no pressure to come up and talk about shit, because that's your business. Um, but yeah. Um, and um, so I felt like the world's biggest asshole because I was only concerned about my safety and like protecting all of this. And then someone else saw that moment and made I look like it made them feel bad. I think that Kiki was very self-conscious about that. But then like luckily when I went into the room, like Kiki was like, hey, I'm gonna be cool, and like I didn't deserve that. but because it just came off as like an asshole move. Um but Kiki was like, I'm cool, like I'm queer, Kiki, I'm really trying not to tell all your business, but like, but so, and I just kind of didn't have words. I couldn't like formulate like full sentences. I was just so like messed up in the brain, but I ended up like writing a little note, and I was like, I am so sorry. I'm such an asshole. I'm manic. I'm having a really hard time forming sentences. And I was like, really, like, the issue is I don't feel comfortable in my body. And like the idea of like anyone else seeing me makes me want to vomit, basically. And so that was like the whole um, tell them how. Um, Tell me what you mean by that, because I'm very confused. Tell them how. Oh yeah. So Kiki has done. Kiki is a budding tattoo artist. Has done a lot, a couple of tattoos on herself. They're amazing. I'm gonna try to get Kiki to get all of this and all these legs. All of these legs. I've got two of them. Um, uh, and um, and but like Kiki has a tattoo on her ankle that just is two people holding hands and it just says gay. And then she pulls up her pants. She's like, I'm cool, you don't have to worry, and then like shows me this tattoo. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be cool. And we've been good friends ever since. But yeah, so I mean that's definitely one way of and Winter, you have amazing tattoos. I love your tattoos. And I just want to be covered. I want to be decked out. A gay tattoo. Exactly. It just was like there were no like there was no like underlying meaning from what I detected. It was just like gay. It just says gay on it with two people holding hands. I was like, that's fierce. I love that. I love that shit. Um, so Kiki was cool as shit. They did move someone else into my room for a night. Happened to be a trans woman, so we both got it. And that was amazing that we could have that vibe. But then they moved me out the next day because someone else needed more care and they needed to be in line of sight. So here's some beef. Here's some tea, rather. Beef and tea. So there was only one room that was in line of sight for the nurse station. And it happened to be the room that I was initially put into. And so they needed to put someone else on line of sight, and they were going to put me with another person I didn't know. And I was like, I don't know this person. I've never talked to them. I've already had 2 good experiences. I was like, my luck's going to run out, and I'm going to end up with a huge transphobe that's going to smother me in my sleep. This is where my brain goes. And so I was like, I don't know them. So I tried to coordinate where someone else can move into this room and I can move into Kiki's room. And so we just kind of maneuvered it where it happened to work out. And so I ended up going back to room with Beef and I was trying to figure out what that first symbol was, but I get it now. Yeah, it took a while to come in. Yeah, Beef and Tea. I should change the name of my channel to just Beef and Tea. It would make no sense to anyone who wasn't here right now. But I ended up moving back in with Kiki, and the rest is history. Because Kiki's cool as shit, and I was down with that. Yeah, and it turned out there were a lot of queer people. There was a trans woman, there was a non-binary person. So it was, I felt like half the ward was in the community, which was amazing. But I also recognize that this is not every situation and stuff like that. So yeah. When I said line of sight, if you're not familiar with, I think it's pretty clear by the name of it, but people who are generally on line of sight cannot be on their own under any circumstances, generally. They are constantly in line of sight of a staff member. How this place did it, it was just any other situation. But I've been on line of sight at other facilities, and they are you're in there, they have the door cracked when you're using the restroom, and they have you kind of in their periphery. You same thing when you're showering. You have no privacy whatsoever because you are a danger to yourself or others. And the line of sight situation was really heavily concerning for me because the people who were on line of sight really desperately needed to be on line of sight, and they weren't given that attention. There was so much medical neglect, and maybe even I would consider medical abuse in certain situations at this place. I think overall the place is one of the better places I've been to, but the staff was so bad that it just kind of completely switched how I viewed this place. Because they the staff was mean. I'm not just talking about the occasional person had a bad day or something like that. Almost every single staff member was just straight up mean, derogatory, neglectful of the patients completely, and it was shocking. There were some situations that happened that were truly what the fuck. So and again, I'm gonna try not to tell anyone shit that I don't feel is appropriate, and then obviously respecting HIPAA and patient privacy and whatnot. So yeah, they would yell at people, they would talk down to people, they would straight up ignore people. You would ask for a medicine, even an ibuprofen. There was one of our friends who was in there, uh, like was on their period and like asked for an ibuprofen, and the nurse was incredibly mean and refused the medication. It's fucking ibuprofen. Like, it's not like this person's asking for like cocaine through the window, through the nursing window. It's like literally ibuprofen. And this nurse was so damn mean and refused medication, and then like after a while like eventually gave this person medication. And it's like, what the hell, like what the fuck, like why are you being like this? I don't understand. Like, if you hate being around mental health patients so much, don't go into mental health care. I don't know why I need to tell you that. And like just like it just was awful. But like then also the people who really needed care were ignored to a certain extent. It was painful to watch at some point. So um yeah, I know, right? And it's like it was fucking wild. And um and they took advantage of the people who were most, what I would perceive as most cognitively troubled in that situation, because I felt like they took advantage of knowing that this person was not medically competent to like sue them or to advocate for themselves. And the thing is, when you're in a mental health facility, you should, like, if you're not able to advocate for yourself, that's not an opportunity for people to take advantage of you. Like, I don't understand how these things happened. It was so incredibly bad. It was shocking. I've never had that experience anywhere else I've been, and I've been to a lot of places. I've got my punch card full. I'm getting a free smoothie next time. So, like, it was buck wild. And um but overall there were a lot of good people that I got to know really well, that we bonded over just the fucking trials and tribulations and fucking conflama of life. And that was really nice to have. There were many assholes. A lot of the assholes were more on like the detoxing or recovery side of things and that dual diagnosis. So they just were so damn mean. But you know, they were rude to the staff and people who were and patients, pretty much equally. So I just kind of like felt like I saw like the like looking at the whole experience, I felt like while I made some really good friends that I hope will be in my life forever or a very long time, I also felt like um, I also felt like I really got to see this like really dark underbelly of like humans. Like, it was so bad at some points, and I was just like, I could not believe it. It was so crazy. So I felt like I lost even more faith in humanity, which you might be like, how is that possible? You are such a pessimist and you hate people. It happened because it was so bad that like somehow it was so shocking that people were somehow worse than I could have ever imagined. That's how bad some things were. Um, and but luckily, I was very fortunate that I didn't have too much of a problem. I did recognize that other people were suffering more than me, so I was aware of that, but I was just trying to survive in my own situation as well. There was an incident that happened where a nurse gave me the wrong medication, and then because I was starting to feel some of the physical early warning signs of mania, and then it didn't kick in, so I tried to go ask another nurse if I could get my like medication. I thought I needed like 8 hours between, because some nurse had told me that, and it wasn't 8 hours. It was maybe like 5 or 6 hours, and I was just like, I need the medication again because it didn't kick. And then I find out that I was never on the medic. I had not taken that medication that day, and I was like, fuck. And so then we went around to the nursing window where they give them, they dispense the medications, and and the nurse who gave the medication started fucking yelling at me, saying that that no one asked for this medication, but everyone this morning was asking for the medication she actually gave me. And I was like, I fucking asked for it. Like, I don't even know what the other medication is. Like, you're saying this medication, I've never even fucking heard of it. I wouldn't ask for that. I don't know anything about that. And so, so we ended up getting it handled, but it was very like combative, and she was rude and whatever. And so I, I really was more upset. I acknowledge that nurses, staff members, all this people are human and they make mistakes, and I wasn't that upset. I just wanted my medication to treat the early signs of mania so that it didn't move into a full episode. But I felt like I was on fire. Like my nerve endings were just like, and I felt like I was on fire. One of the techs, who was amazing, kept on getting me ice, and I had some ice on my head, like in a washcloth, and I was dipping my hand into ice, and I was trying to overwhelm the symptoms that I was already feeling. And so the next day, because the psychiatrist had already gone, the next day I talked to the psychiatrist, and I was like, no one came and checked on me. Like, the nurse never came and checked on me, kept on saying, just wait, just wait. But then, like, some of the assholes, other people in the other patients on the unit were, like, louder than I was. So they got priority over me, even though I was at the point where I was like, should I call 911? Should I see a doctor? Because I was like, the physical symptoms are so overwhelming and I might go into a severe episode. And I was at that point, and finally, like, when they eventually gave me my medication, it knocks me out. I sleep for a couple hours. But like, no one checked on me other than the techs, and there were two techs that were really fantastic, took really good care of us, and then everyone else was just garbage, pretty much. And so I was more upset about how it was handled. I asked for a medication. I should have gotten it. When I asked for the medication, I asked for the brand name. But I also said, because I didn't know how it looked in their system. So I was like, I also tried to pronounce um, so I asked for Seroquel, which is my emergency downer. The, um, the generic name is quintiapine, but I was having trouble, like, putting my thoughts together. So I was like, quintiapine, I don't know. And then I said, it starts with a Q. So I gave 3 indications of what exact medication I needed that morning, and still I got the wrong medication. So the fact that I had given so much, first of all, I'm on a lot of medications. Like, there's no denying that. I'm on a lot of medications, but they're necessary medications. I'm not on them for fun. People don't prescribe them to me for fun. And so first, the nurse that morning had been like, well, you're on this. You shouldn't need it. Well, bitch, I need it. I know my body, especially right now, I know that I need it. So give me the fucking medication, because it's an as needed medication that has no contraindications with the other medication I'm taking. So give me my fucking meds. I didn't say that, but like, I was like, it's as needed. I can take it as I need it. I need it. Like, that was like all I said. And she kept on being like, oh, you don't need it. And I was like, but I do. And I'm prescribed this because I do need it. So. And then she ended up giving me the wrong medication, even though I gave, honestly, all of the nurses needed training. And you can't teach someone to be empathetic, but you can fire someone who doesn't know how to do their damn job, who not only can't de-escalate, but often escalates situations for mental health patients. Don't be in a job like that if you can't handle a job like that, period. And maybe they don't realize that they're not good at their job, but management should, the supervisor should. So the next day, after all of that hours and hours and hours of physical pain, feeling like I was just like lit on fire, like covered in gasoline, lit on fire, left to die. That's how I was feeling, so bad. And I was like, maybe I'm having an interaction with this medication or something like that, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't know anything. And so the next day, thankfully I made it through it because I slept. The next day I spoke to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist was like, you need to talk to a supervisor. This shouldn't have happened, and kind of gave me some of the points that were the primary fuck ups in the situation. But the whole time I was there, as far as I know, I was the only person who got to speak to a supervisor, even though there was severe mistreatment by many people. And I think that's where I noticed that the people who couldn't advocate for themselves were being taken advantage of because they were not in the position to speak to a supervisor to say I was mistreated, or they weren't cognitively there enough when they had those severe moments to be able to vocalize that. So it's like, well, those people should get better care. They should get more care, not less care, because they're mentally not in the right place, right? It was horrendous. Some of the things I saw, I could not believe. Okay, thanks, Winter, for hanging out. Appreciate it. Take care. Um, so I did speak to a supervisor. Like I said, I think I was the only one who got to speak to a supervisor the whole time there, even though there were many, many issues throughout. And I tried to vocalize some of the other ones like later in the discussion. They're like, anything else you need? And I was like, oh yeah, this. Oh yeah, this. Like, oh yeah, this. And so so I was able to vocalize that to a supervisor, whereas it was very different for other people, from my point of view, at least. And so yeah, so it was interesting. And so that was the only problem I had. And I really went in with like, okay, the nurse is a human, mistakes happen, which I shouldn't even have to have that level of grace that I give. If I gave such an explanation to the medication I needed, they fought me about it first, which that was one of the major issues that the psychiatrist brought up, was like, the nurse is not prescribing you this medication. They should not be able to tell you what you can and can't take unless there is like a huge contraindication about like timing or things like that. But because there wasn't, they just had the opinion that I was on so many meds that I didn't need anymore. And like, I'm sorry, but that's not the case for me. Like, fuck off. So that was one of the big things that I brought up to the supervisor, that the psychiatrist helped me like put together what like the big problems were. But I was like, to the supervisor, I was like, look, this person is a human. Humans make mistakes. And I could have been like, I'm gonna sue y'all asses and fucking whatever, but like that just wasn't what I was going for. And like I was just like, it was how it was handled was a big red flag for me. And they're like, absolutely, absolutely. Um, but then there was like another issue that the psychiatrist raised that I brought to the attention of the supervisor. And so I guess like that's, that was the worst I experienced. Definitely the worst I felt the entire time I was there. I met a lot of really cool people. I was dead named a lot. Hey, Jolene, welcome. I just want to let you know, I did put a trigger warning here. It's a little hard to read, but I'm talking about some serious issues surrounding my most recent mental health episode, the care that I received, and also some trans and queer care issues. So if you're sensitive to that, please take care of yourself first. I just want to give you a heads up because this font sucks at reading, but it looks cool. So I use it anyways. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I met some great people. I met some terrible people. And I was really lucky to have a lot of support, both within the facility and from my support system at home. Um, and but I was dead named 98% of the time by staff. Um, like I said, there was a trans woman and a non-binary person um, in the facility. There were also a couple people who went by um, either nicknames, or they just hated, like one person just hated their birth name and just was called something completely different. So they had a big whiteboard in the back of the nursing station that everybody could see. And um, they kept on changing mine, where they would make my dead name, really big. Um, there's my sister. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean, advocating for other people, I mean, that is so important. I was trying to advocate for myself, take care of myself, but also advocate for other people who didn't have the capability of doing it, or who I didn't think had the capability of doing it right then. And even if they did, having more than one account of a situation where, like, up to human rights violations were happening, I tried to advocate for every patient that I could. And so, yeah, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that right now, or dealing with it. Period. It's just not great. So yeah, it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people. So I just wanted to give a heads up. Yeah, I receive pretty bad care at this facility from staff members. Um, so for like the trans issues, so I was the only one whose dead name was like huge, large print, and they kept on changing it, but they always had my dead name on the board. Whereas pretty much no one else, or like very occasionally, like someone else's uh, like dead name or name that they didn't prefer, was not on the board, or if it was like very small. Whereas for me, they kept on putting me by my dead name. And not only that, but there was a therapist there. So they had columns for each person, and one of them was like, "What's their therapist name?" And there were two Therapists. I'll use that term loosely because they're actually care coordinators and have do no lick of therapy. And the only one, there were two of them, and one of them had my dead name. And the only name that they put on there, and which was about half of the patients, was the one that had my dead name. So my dead name was all over the fucking place. And I was constantly being referred to by my dead name. And while other people were referred to by either their dead name or non preferred name, it happened to me much more. And I think maybe part of it is because I don't pass, or whatever. I don't know. And I didn't want to take away from anyone else's experience. I didn't want to be like, hey, my dead name's up there. You should throw someone else's dead name up there. That was not my intention. I was like, please just don't put my dead name up there, or like make it as small as possible. But they kept on changing mine, where they didn't do that, to my knowledge, to anyone else. It's very, very weird. And I already had these safety concerns coming in. And I was just like, please, just for the love of God. And like, I only snapped once. Um, and it was a nurse who was particularly like rude and like pushy. And she had, that night, she had already made two people cry back to back. So I was prepared to have no fucking patience with this person. And then she called my dead name, and I said, that's not my name. I go by Ian. And she was like, oh, okay, it's time for your meds. And I was like, I'm talking to someone else who's crying right now. It became the patient's responsibility to take care of other patients rather than having staff take care of patients. Like, that's how fucking weird it was. I've never been to a place where, like, and patients do support other patients, and that's good. Um, 46 is crazy. It does suck. It sucks, and every place is different on what sucks. But yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. Because it's just very young to be in a rest home, and yeah, it will never cease to shock me. Not only my own experience, but hearing other people's stories. And it's sad because those are the people who are most vulnerable, mentally ill folks and elderly folks and kids, like those are the people who receive some of the worst care. And you're like, but they're the people who need it most. Why is it opposite of how it should be? I just don't understand that. I never will. I can't relate. And I think that's because I have a heart. It's cold and shriveled and almost dead, but it's not quite dead, and am able to have a little bit of sympathy there, or as much sympathy and empathy as I can. So, so yeah, it was just a pretty interesting fucking experience. I still would go back to this place because, like I said, everything other than the staff was actually really good, but the staff was so freaking bad. So I got out yesterday. That was my 11th day at that facility after being transferred from the hospital. And let me take a little sippy of coffee. So I came home yesterday. I didn't want to do this live right away. I knew I would need some time to kind of like recalibrate a little bit, and I'm still working on that because things are still kind of like, I felt like almost 100% better before I left the facility home, and I was like, so much life, people talking. So yeah, I'm glad I took a day, but even now I'm not perfectly okay and like stable. So my next step is going to a partial hospitalization program, which is 5 or 6 days a week. Depending on the program, you stay there for most of the day and then you go home at night. So it's kind of one of those like step down programs where you can they fucked up our services to begin with. Well, I'm so glad I can be of help because I didn't want to come on. I mean, part of this was just me getting it out and airing that experience. But like, if it can help anyone, that is a super added bonus, right? I don't want anyone to have to go through the things that I saw that I've seen in other facilities. So, I think just talking about it, reducing like stigma around it, and talking about mental health care is so incredibly important. And then constantly trying to make mental health care, all types of medical care, better, I don't think ever is going to be a bad thing. There's always going to be flaws in any system, but if we start to address the flaws, then maybe the flaws that we do see are so much smaller. Like, they were huge at this facility. So next, I'm going to see I'm going to try to do a partial hospitalization program. This is not something I can do virtually. I have to physically go into this facility. It's a different one. The the Triangle Springs that I went to, they did have um, they did have a partial hospitalization program, but I needed for my own, like, I didn't know what the partial hospitalization program was like, but I was like, this staff sucks. I don't want to be around the staff anymore, especially not right now. And so I'm going to a different place where I'm going to talk to them. I talked a little bit to them today, but then I started talking to them more. I will have like a full in-depth like consultation tomorrow at noon Eastern, which I don't know why you would need to know that, but I just told you that. And so I, yeah, let me get my brain back together. Uh, so, um, sorry. Yeah, I'm doing a partial hospitalization program. So I'll get to come home. It's a great step down for a lot of people, because sometimes going from like this higher level of care into just nothing, is usually very jarring for people. It's very difficult for people. So getting that kind of like tapering off of that intensity of care, can help people adjust to life once they get out a little bit more. And so it's kind of like a step down program. And so I will, hopefully be able to go to that. One of the issues that I face, particularly, with a program like a partial hospitalization program, because you go and leave every day, is that I have pretty bad agoraphobia, and it's hard for me to leave the house sometimes, a lot of the times. And so the fact that I would have to get up every day, go, not have a panic attack just trying to get there, and then, usually once I leave the house, things are relatively fine, but getting to the point where I can leave the house is very difficult. It was kind of one of the main points in how I got disability, was because my agoraphobia was so bad. And so uh, I just like, I'm hoping that I can swing it and make it work. If I can't, there's other levels of care. There's a virtual, intensive outpatient, or IOP program, that I've been to before, that I really do like. I don't necessarily think it's the most appropriate level of care for me, but it is an option if the partial hospitalization program sends me into more of a tizzy than I would be without it. So, um, yeah, so that's kind of what's happening now. They changed some meds for me. I did have some medication interactions, not interactions, with other medications, but interactions with my body. Negative side effects, I guess is a better way to put it. I did have some of those and had to switch meds, and now I'm on fucking 3 mood stabilizers, which is pretty wild. That's pretty up there in that particular med class. Um, yeah, that's really, really challenging. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to communicate like, hey, if this does happen, can it like, I need to make sure insurance covers it, because if insurance doesn't cover it, well, I can't afford it. But if I don't attend enough sessions, then insurance won't cover it and all this stuff. So gonna kind of fill them in a little bit more about that situation for me. Um, so the program that I went to, it's called Charlie Health. Let me see if I can get a link for you. I don't know. So they only have 2 programs. Um, they have, adolescent, and they have young adult, which I think goes up to 35. They might have more options, or they might be able to direct you, but this is all virtual, so you do not have to leave your home, which is very nice. So if you wanted to check this out and see if this is an option, or see if they can give you some resources, they might be able to help you with that, if that's the appropriate level of care your sister needs. I'm sorry to hear that, because it is very difficult to just show up. And I think a lot of people take that for granted because they haven't had those problems. And it's not their fault that they haven't had those problems by any means. I'm glad that they don't. But it is really difficult for a lot of people to get there, show up, be on time, stay the whole time, not freak out, all this stuff. So, yeah. I so that's my next step, and I'm hoping it goes well. I'm hoping it works out, which sucks for everything. Yeah, I went to a treatment center in Boston, also just outside of Boston, and it blew. This place is, they're actually located in Montana, like that's where their headquarters is, but they do it throughout the U.S. Now they do require, so part of it is like having a therapist in the state that you're, or that can practice in the state that you're in. So like for a while, like I went and it was fine. I had a therapist, and then I tried to go back a couple like maybe like less than a year later, and they didn't have anyone practicing in North Carolina anymore, so I couldn't go. But then like a couple months later, then they did have someone practicing in North Carolina, and that was fine. So you might find that. And like I said, I just don't know about the age thing, and I don't want to promise anything without knowing more details. But virtual IOPs are game changers for people who have trouble leaving the house. I mean, it's a big fucking deal. So I was really thankful for when they came into my life. I was recommended this place initially by my psychiatrist. I've been to them twice. They also have really excellent alumni programs, or an alumni program where they'll have like process groups. They'll have like therapeutic settings, but they'll also have just like fun things. Like I'm in like a knitting and crocheting group, um, and like that's super fun. That meets every week. I have done D&D campaigns, that were really fun. And, they have all kinds of interests, um, and they range from being like therapy focused to being just for fun and to have a sense of community. So if that is a possibility, and that is helpful, feel free to check that out. I really do like that place. And like I said, they might have resources. If they don't accommodate her age, they might have resources for people who do. I would hope so. Um, but yeah, they just call it young adult, and I'm like, I'm 32. Is that a young adult? I don't feel like it is, but okay. um, but yeah, they go up to 35, so I gotta get my, and they come West home 3 towns away. Oh my gosh, that's totally fucking different. That's totally different. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the partial hospitalization program is a day program where they come home, at every where you come home every night. So I honestly, I wouldn't know what to do with myself if I was like, because that's the level of care I need now, a day program. And if they were like, no, you're going to go into a rest home instead, that would wreck me. I don't know what I would do with myself. So, yeah. Um, Yeah, so mental health, not just in the US, but all over the world, needs massive reform. Healthcare in general needs a massive reform and multiple facets. Um, but taking advantage of people among their most vulnerable moments in life, like I said, children, the elderly, and mentally ill folks, those people, like the good facilities and nurses and techs, they really make a huge difference, but they are filled to the brim with shitty levels of care, and care in general. So I'm very sorry you're dealing with that. I can only fucking imagine. um, I also found out about a community program, for me, here in North Carolina, specifically in the county that I'm in. And I wonder if there are similar programs around you, and also if this would fit your. I'm gonna actually have you email me because I don't. It's so like local that I kind of am a little squirrely about giving, my um, my like county away. But if you want to know what I found, and maybe they can refer you to a place that's similar to a program that's similar, um, in wherever you are in Mass. Um, so this is my email. Feel free to email me, and I will send you that information. But it's they call it like a step program, and so it's for people um, who have chronic conditions, but they're having an acute episode. The one that I am going to specializes in bipolar and schizophrenic and schizoaffective disorders. Um, and they are kind of like, if you're hospitalized and go into care a lot, they are kind of like a middle step into that to help you get the care you need and help you, in theory, like get you through those moments. And so I don't know what your sister have. You don't have to disclose it, but there might be something similar because I was feeling like I was running out of options. I've been to so many places. I've been on every single medication out there in the fucking world, and I just felt like I was running out of options. It was making me very hopeless about life and things going forward. And luckily, I was told about this option and other options, and it's giving me a lot more hope. So hopefully, there's something similar for you, and where you and your sister live, because that would be amazing. And hopefully, there's something similar for whatever she's dealing with. Again, you do not have to tell me that is as private as you want it to be. But for me, that's because they specialize in severe mental health issues, or what they classify as severe mental health issues. Bipolar, schizoaffective, and schizophrenia. It's really like, well, we want you to get care, but we know that like not everything, like there might be a step between zero to hospital, and so that's what it does. It seems like it'll do, which makes me a lot more hopeful, and that feels really nice to have some hope because this depressive episode, part of the huge thing that I was dealing with was like I just don't have hope. It's like if this is going to be my life, off and on and off and on and off and on repeat multiple times a year, multiple times a month, I just like don't want that going forward. And I know that sounds super depressing, but like it was depressing, and it is depressing. But like, it's hard to see a future if like your whole future is you being in a facility off and on for the rest of your life. So I did struggle with feelings of hopelessness and not feeling like I had a place to go, and finding more resources actually was really helpful. But I had to go through a lot of dead ends, unfortunately, um, and second opinions to reach that. So I hope it's easier for you, but I know how alone it all can feel, and I'm really sorry that you and your sister are going through that. So hopefully you can find the appropriate level of care and have some more resources in your back pocket just in case. So I've talked for an hour and a half. That's a lot of it. There are things here and there. If you want to kind of hear the beginning of the story, how we led up into this manic episode, some of the kind of crazier things that happened in the hospital or whatever, like I said, because I was having like bad delusion, hallucination, she's bipolar, and nicotine addiction, she has a lot. Yeah, I have a lot too. But yeah, the bipolar, like I said, if it's in North Carolina, I would be surprised if there wasn't something similar in a more uh, populated, modern state like Massachusetts, because things that come to North Carolina have generally been implemented everywhere else except for South Carolina. So hopefully there are resources out there. Um, yeah, those are really, really, really tough, and I totally get that. So yeah, so I've talked quite a bit, and I might leave you all with that, just because there's no need to get into the tiny little details, because I told the highlights, and even the highlights took me an hour and a half to get out, and I was pretty consistent with being able to talk. I wasn't like as all over the place as I normally am. So I'm gonna probably go crochet and relax a little bit, rest my voice. But thank you for hanging out. Please feel free to email me if you would like. I would love to be able to be a resource or give you some resources that have or will maybe help me. And, if you don't want to reach out, that's totally fine. No pressure. Um, but yeah, so um, thanks for hanging out with me, for listening to my story. I called this a welcome back party. It was really just more of like a rant session, but I'm very happy to be back. And I'm thankful for all of my friends that I have here, the support system I have both online and in person. And, life can be really challenging, but, I think the more we know, the more equipped we are to move forward and, handle, life's curveballs. 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 So I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.